All right. Hey, good morning. Happy Thursday. Let's do this. We get to talk about names list. This is such an important topic, and we're doing this for some consecutive weeks, right? To make sure that we're all situated and prepared for the push period, right? Okay. So I'm going to start. This might be a little different than what you thought. I'm going to start by going through some mindset things and just some beliefs about your names list. After we get through this, I'm going to give you some resources. So the back half of this morning, I'm going to give you some resources and some things that you can do. My hope here, and this is for everybody. So if I'm being very transparent with everybody here, my expected outcome, my desired outcome for me going through this for 3 weeks with all of you is that by the time that we get to SC2, right, which is really by July 11th, which is the phone jam that leads up to it, that everybody has 200 plus leads. Okay. So go ahead and write that down. That's the outcome that we're working towards, 200 plus leads. Okay. Now, first thing to jot down is a mindset thing. Cutco is the best home product available. You know, one of the things that we oftentimes in our life will do is we don't necessarily visit our beliefs about something, and the beliefs that are underneath a lot of times influence our activities and the solutions that we find without us recognizing it. And so this is a really important one, which is number one, I believe Cutco is the best home product that's available. As a homeowner, we talk about this in training. It is the only thing with 100% certainty that I know that I'm going to use every day. And no matter what happens, I'll never have to pay to get it replaced. That makes it the most valuable thing that I have because there's absolutely no recurring costs on this thing. There's no replacement costs. There's no upkeep maintenance costs. There's none of that. And so this is something for you to visit because if I believe that, I may operate a little differently. So the second belief, go ahead and write down the second mindset belief is everyone deserves the opportunity to buy. Everyone deserves the opportunity to buy. I believe this is the best home product that's available, that's out there for a consumer to be able to get. And therefore, I also believe that everybody should get the opportunity to purchase it. Well, how are they going to purchase it? They can purchase Cutco a few different ways, right? Fair and show. Only so many people go to those. Only so many people will go and actually see the Cutco booth. Maybe they hear about it from somebody and they go to Cutco.com, but we don't sell a lot on Cutco.com. And so it really is from you. It's from you saying, it's my mission to give every single person that is 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation from me the opportunity to buy the best home product that's available. Okay, that's the second thing. The third belief that really matters is that when I call someone, the outcome is always positive. Jot that down. When I call someone, the outcome is always positive. So what do I mean by that? Do I mean that I always book the demo? Absolutely not. Why is it always positive? This is a mindset thing. Now, will I run into a rude customer here or there? Yeah. And by the way, the more calls that you make, the more rude people you run into. That's life. Okay, that just comes with the territory. And so, you know, what I want you to understand when it comes to this is that I have to have this belief that no matter what, when I call someone, the outcome is going to be positive. Now, I also know deep down, there's going to be a few that aren't necessarily positive, but I get to choose how I feel about it. And I'm going to choose to associate positive feelings with every phone call that I make. Now, you guys everybody here should have enough experience to recognize that when you've called people who you were chicken to call, right, on your chicken list, 9 times out of 10, if not 99 out of 100, what happens? They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, hey, how are you? Right? They're surprised to hear from you. They're excited to hear from you, and they book an appointment. And it is much smoother than maybe what you made it out to be in your head. The next one, jot down. This one's really important. I'm 1 degree of separation. Write this down. I'm 1 degree of separation away from thousands of people. So here's what I mean by this. This is the absolute abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. Okay, in life, what's normal? Scarcity mindset. Why is that normal? It's just the way that society operates. It's what we're bombarded with all the time in the media, and it's really easy to fall into a scarcity mindset. Scarcity such as, oh, I only know so many people. The flip side of that is you're 1 degree of separation away from thousands of people, probably tens of thousands. If you look at your network, when I say 1 degree of separation, your network is not. 1 degree would be, okay, my siblings' network, my mom's network, my dad's network, my best friend's network, my boyfriend or girlfriend's network. If you add all that up, it is thousands. In a lot of cases, tens of thousands, depending on how many of these people that you utilize. Does everybody follow that? You have to look at it that way. The last thing I want you to write down is that it's worth it. So what I'm about to talk about in terms of like building your resource list. This resource list is the single greatest asset that you will ever have in this job. And I would also say what I'm getting into here is that, it's that whole statement of your network is your net worth. This asset that you are creating, this names list, is always one of your greatest assets that you'll ever have. Why? Those relationships, you never know when those things are going to come in handy. And if you are constantly trying to think of other people, it would make sense that this is going to go positively for you. I'm going through right now, this fall, I'm going to be going through the launch of my book. And I can tell you this network thing matters. I'm working with a launch company, and the launch company was like, hey, here's this spreadsheet. We want you to fill out all the people that you know. It was just like I was back in day 1 of training. And they were like, list everybody. And then they were taking me through the process of, okay, who has a podcast? Who owns a business? Who's a leader on a team, right? And I was going through, and I was doing the same thing that we do with you guys in training, right? Which is called prospecting. And what's so funny is so many people that were on that list, some way or another, fell into my social network in weird ways. You are intentionally building your network. And so you might think, oh, this is for SC2, it's for Sell Cutco. Yes, and would be my response. In other words, there are so many different ways that there are going to be other avenues that this is going to impact you in the future. So this network matters. It's absolutely worth it. So in order for you to grow your names list, what's the slow way to grow your names list? Recommendations. Right? I want you to write that down. Slow way to build your names list. Now, when I say slow, if you have 20 appointments booked for this week, it can actually be a really fast thing, right? It's just like, well, let me get good at leads before these 20 appointments, and boom, now I'm off to the races. If you do not have a lot of resources right now, then recommendations is a slow build. Does it make sense? I only have 2 appointments this week, so I can only build it so fast through those 2. But here is what I'm trying to design for you. You work hard this week, next week, the week after at building your resource list. You get it up to 200. While you're doing this, you're also doing presentations and trying to improve your recommendation game. Then you go to the push and you book the most appointments you've ever booked, and you get the best you've ever been at recommendations. Then after that first week, you have this explosion of recommendations, and then you fall into this category like our top representatives who never have an issue with names. almost everybody in Cutco reaches this danger zone, this scraping the bottom of the barrel. What does that mean? It means, ooh, I don't have as many people as I'd like to have right now on my list. You guys have all felt like that at some point. Even people that have big names lists that will come into training with 100 on their list, what happens is they're not primarily focused on recommendations. And I've talked about this before, but I used to have people memorize leads before they left training. Like absolutely, nobody is allowed to leave. We will not go on to the next section until everybody can recite recommendations from heart. Like that's how intense I was in training. And guess what happened when people left training? They still sucked at recommendations. Why? Because what's more exciting to focus on when you're new is making sales. And so it became my belief, it is my belief, that almost everybody needs this oh crap moment of like, whoa, my list isn't as good as I want it to be. And then there, right at that moment, is a point of decision. And in our life, we're presented with so many points of decision. These moments where we make one decision, which absolutely changes the course of what we do, or we make another decision, which changes it in a different direction. So many of you may be here today at this point where you're like, I don't have a lot of leads. Here are your options. Don't fix it and quit. Go get another job. Or fix it and never be in the same issue again. But sometimes we need to put our hand on the stove to see how hot it really is before we understand not to touch it. Can you guys relate with that? Somebody says, don't do something. It's like, well, I kind of want to just see. And with this, recommendations, there's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, recommendations are important. Yep, they're important. And then, but it doesn't really mean a lot to them until they get to a place where they get to a phone gym and they're like, I'd like to have more people to call. So how do you fix it? You do two things. You rebuild your list, which is what I'm talking with you today about. And number two is you commit to being the best at recommendations. It's those two things together. And when you do that, you never fall out back into that same situation again. I did it. When did I do it? At the end of my first summer. At the end of my first summer, I was like, I don't think I'm selling Cutco after this summer. So I stopped asking for recommendations my last week and a half on the job. I was like, whatever. I just, I've got enough to get me through the end of the summer. And then what happened? I ran out of money, needed a job, and was like, oh, I guess I'll go back to Cutco. And then I was like, oh, well, this kind of sucks. I didn't realize I left myself with really crappy situation. So what did I do? Over winter break, I wanted to sell Cutco. I said to my brother, hey, can I pay you for you to give me a list of your friends' parents? And my older brother, 2 years older than me, said, screw off. I'm not going to do that. And I said, all right. My younger sister, who's 6 years younger, I said, Callie, I'll pay you $5. She was like 12 or 13. I was like, I'll pay you $5. Can you give me a list of 20 of your friends, classmates, whatever? And she did it, $5. And from that list, I got 12 appointments and I sold $6,000 over my winter break to those 12 appointments. That was all, guys. I was at 35% too. So I made over $2,000 from a $5 investment. I don't think I've ever made that kind of return on an investment to this day. So, and by the way, my sister then sold Cutco when she was 18, and these were some of the first people that she called back, and they bought more from her, right? So it was actually a good thing for her also. But my point in saying this is there's so many different ways, there's so many different stories of people that have kind of rebuilt their list. The number one thing though is you have to have this strong belief behind it in terms of why it's worth it, why it's worth the time, why it's worth the grind, why it's worth let me put myself out there, why it's worth all of that. And I have absolutely so much conviction in the SC2 process, in what you get from that, what you learn, all of that, that I know that this is worth it. I also know that the way that people come out of that push period, it's like it's a completely different job to them. And I want that for you, but we've got to kind of tackle this first piece. There's also a lot of people that are like, I would love to commit to the push period, but I just don't have the people to call, right? This is like the one thing usually that stands in the way of people being like, I'm all in, I'm going for it. And that's why I want to work on this for 3 weeks to make this a non-issue. If you decide not to go for the push, but you got your list of 200, you're still in a better situation, aren't you? So this is worth the grind, if you will. This is worth you putting yourself out there to get in a better situation. All right. So I'm going to give you some resources and some avenues for you to pursue over the next 3 weeks. Next week's meeting is going to be a little bit different on Thursday night. Okay. So the first thing I want you to write down, today is going to be more on like the bigger resource lists. Okay. So number one, go ahead and write down directories. Now, when it comes to directories, Morgan gave a great message on the chicken list at the conference on Monday, right? Or she talked on Tuesday. And one of the things that she said, she goes, I was fortunate enough to go to a private school, so I had a directory. I don't know if anybody caught that. All right, directories are still a thing. It is really common in my experience for people to be like, I don't have a directory right out of the gates without actually spending the time to research and figure out, do you have a directory? Because there's a lot of people that have a directory, it's maybe just buried and you haven't used it in a while. So I'm going to give you a few thought joggers, if you will. This whole thing, none of this works if you have a scarcity mindset. So as we go through this, I need you to just be like, sure, I might have that. I don't know. Right? So this is all about abundance of ideas right now. Number one, go ahead and write down church directory. Now, it's very popular, very common for a church to have a directory of its members. Okay. Now, what do you do with these when you get them? We'll talk about that here in a second. But church directory, that could be yours, that could be parents, that could be loved one, just a directory for church. Second one would be school directory. So this could be, a grade school, middle school, high school, whatever. Don't assume you don't have one. You might have been given one, or somebody in your family was given one and you just didn't give it any thought. And so it got stuffed into the crap cupboard. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Right? Or the junk drawer that's just got everything in it. The next thing I want you to jot down, go ahead and write down neighborhood. Okay, neighborhood directory. These are, I used to think these weren't super common. And then I bought my first house in South Minneapolis. We weren't in a gated community or anything. And I, in my mind, had always thought neighborhood directories were for those communities. We moved into an area, Diamond Lake Road area in South Minneapolis. And when we moved in, the previous owners left us. I wouldn't call it a directory, but it was like all the names and numbers and info of everybody that lived in like a 3-block radius of us. It's like, here's the neighborhood. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Right? So that's a thing, is my point. All right. Next thing I want you to write down is sports. And then the last one is jobs. Now, a directory could be something as simple as 8 lit numbers. In training, I talk about how my mom had this calling tree on the fridge of a tennis team. There's only 8 numbers on it, but that was a directory, right? That was a resource list. Now, when you get these, those become leads that you could contact. Not all of them are created equal. You guys follow that? Like if you have 0 relationship with somebody, that's going to be less of a productive resource of somebody that you actually have awareness with. Okay. Now, one of the things when it comes to reaching out to people, though, is all you need is some sort of a connection. So, another one for directories to put down are country clubs. All right. So I'm going to give a story of one of my favorite reps from the past. Her name is Catherine Kearney. She went by Cat. Cat was, she was a ball of energy. She's from the Minnetonka, Minnesota area. And when Cat got started, I think she sold $2,000 in her fast start. So she was, just barely, she wasn't really working a lot. Then this push period rolls around and she's like, this seems cool. This kind of like sums her up. She's like, this seems cool. Work really hard. Yeah, I'll try this. So she was in like the lead up to the push and she was trying to gather resources. And she brought to the phone jam, she brought the Lafayette Club, which is like a country club that's near Lake Minnetonka. So she brought the Lafayette Club directory. And I said, what's that directory? And she said, I brought a few. I said, what are they? And she said, this one here is the country club directory. I was like, oh, that could be good. And then I said, are you a member? She goes, my grandma is. My grandma's kind of like a parent to me. I'm with her all the time. She gave me this. And I said, okay. And she goes, I go, did she go through and mark down who she knows well? She goes, she did. And then Kat goes, could I just call everybody in here? Now, that's not a normal rep question. Most reps would be like, I don't want to do that. Kat wired a little differently. It's just like, can I just call everybody in here? And I was like, I mean, you could. I said, you're going to get a little bit more like, who are you? But I can help drop a little script for you that can make a connection. She's like, I think I just want to do that because I know these people are all good because, you know, they're paying X amount. She goes, I know what it costs to join that country club. So I think that all these people would be pretty good. It's an expensive country club. And I said, sure, I'll help you with the approach. I was surprised at her gusto of just like, I don't really care. Because in her mind, she was like, look, I don't really know these people. So if they say no, I'm not going to take offense to it. Now, Kat, by the way, she had a massive push, right? She sold over $14,000. So she went from $2,000 coming into the push to $14,000 in the push period. And that was her main resource that generated a lot of recommendations for her. Okay, so directories. Your first like assignment, I would say, is you need to do some digging around the house to see what you have. Some directories are now online, right? They might not have given you a printed one, but it's online.
Yeah, I actually have one. When I first started, I have one from St. Agnes private school. But
Okay.
I called one person because
So
my
Daniel,
mother.
we got to, if you just rip through that thing, it's never going to go well unless we can actually write a script for you that's specific.
Yeah, I only called one person from that, and like I got a no from it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna save this for like a good time I can actually do it. And then now that you mention it, I'm actually gonna use that tonight.
Yeah, smart. Don't call it though until we, create some verbiage for you that kind of addresses the whole you don't know who I am personally. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I
And if
got
you
that a
don't,
lot.
it's like, wait, what? But there's a way around that which we can help with. So Daniel, thanks for that. Okay, let's keep rolling. The next thing is going to be multiple avenues all under the same banner. So the next one that I want you to write down is social media DMs. Social media is the single greatest connector of people right now in the world that we live in. Okay. So I'm connected to thousands of people on Facebook. And again, I'm an HM30, so I'm using me as an example. Between Facebook and LinkedIn, those are the two I want you to write down. Your customers, your target customers are connected on Facebook and LinkedIn. Other things also, but those two are such a main driver. And so when you think about this, this is one where I really want you to think outside the box. It's not just your network, but it's who else's network could be great for me. Now, you'd need to get permission, okay? But here's what I mean. If I'm, we've got different demographics that are on here. If I am 18, 19, 20 years old, I'm going to look through my Facebook at anybody that's an HM30, and I'm going to send them this message. I'll post this in the chat. Some of you have already seen it. Hey, so-and-so. So it'd be, Curtis sent me the one that he used. Hey, Olivia, this is Curtis, Jennifer and Peter's son. I'm trying to win a scholarship this summer from work, but I need to show adults my presentation to get credit. Can I get your number and potentially reach out to you later to see if you'd be willing to help me out? And then what he typically would do is name drop a couple of people that have helped him out in the past. Okay. So, and he says, so such and such and such and such and such and such helped me out. So I thought I'd ask you also. It's a little bit of social proof. Does that make sense? So that's one written a little bit more for parents. Okay. Faith just said in the chat that I DM'd 20 of my mom's friends I knew on Facebook. I just didn't have their numbers and I booked 15 appointments. Here's the mistake that people make with messaging on social media. They wait until the phone jam is like a day away or 2 days away, and then they start sending messages. And it's like, well, that doesn't give you enough time for that cycle to play itself through. Does that make sense? So I'm teaching you this one today, 3 weeks before the push starts, so you can start sending out messages. Because what's going to happen, you're not going to get 100% response, and that's okay. So in order to get to 200, you got to take massive action. But the interesting thing with this job is I'm going to give you solutions for this. One of the things that people will do, though, is even though there's solutions, they might say, that might be hard. But what I want you to understand is many of you have the opportunity in 17 days to make somewhere between $3,000 and $10,000 in income in 17 days. It should be hard. Shouldn't it? And so if it feels like, I got to do a lot of work, it's like, well, that would make sense because big things are ahead. So Facebook, if you're a younger student, you want to look at your network first, and then you want to see, hey, would it be okay if I reached out to some people in my mom or dad's network? If you're an HM30, again, I'm connected to thousands of HM30s through social media. It does not mean that I talk to them all the time. But Facebook, HM30s are on Facebook all the time. LinkedIn, people expect to get messages on LinkedIn. Like if I get a message on LinkedIn, I'm not surprised. Like that's that platform. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out, what are your avenues for this? And I want you to think abundantly. Don't stop at just your network. Remember what I said before, that we are connected 1 degree of separation from thousands of people. You just have to think outside the box, think creatively, think abundantly. Now, here's the last thing I want you to do today. Let me post that that message in the chat. By the way, Faith, if you used a different one, Faith, if you used a different message, maybe throw that in the chat also. That'd be great if you can go find it.
Yeah, I use more of like a girl approach. So like it's got like hearts and stuff. So maybe only the girls are gonna
throw it in there. I like, everybody here is intelligent enough to change a word here or there. If heart emojis aren't your thing, to delete the heart emojis. Yeah, Nextdoor app can also work. I'm sure Alex Funk definitely uses hearts. Okay. All right. Here's the last thing I need you to do, and I'd love for you to do it right now before we're done. You need to know where you're starting from. And what I mean by that is, if I were to say to you right now, Sean McRoberts, I want you to call 100% of the callable resources that you have. I don't care if you're chicken to call them. How many is that? Right? Jessica Howard, if you were to go through all your resources right now, like phone numbers that in your app or whatever else, the recommendations that you could call, how many is that? So if we're trying to get to 200 plus, you got to know where you're at today. Does that make sense? If I'm trying to lose weight or gain weight, well, I got to know what I weigh today in order for me to track my progress. So what I want you to do is, if everybody can add up their number, and I want you to message that to your manager today, this morning. They'll know what it is. So just 34 resources, 25, 105, right? Everybody here's in a different situation. There you go. So Faith just threw hers in there. Now, by the way, Faith's is to get an appointment. Curtis is to get the contact number. What I would say is you want to be right now be sending messages to get the contact number. You can do this on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Guys, what I've given you today are a few avenues for you to pursue. Please take action between now and next Thursday on these things. Nothing feels better than to slowly be getting numbers and to be slowly building those resource lists. What I want for you is that next week when you're here, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 more on your list than what you have right now. So send that number to your manager, how many that you have right now, right? If it takes you a minute, add it up and then send it in. If you're in my office, you can send it to me or to Alex. And then let's get to work. Let's get to work. Thank you guys for being here this morning on this journey of Cutco. Have a massively productive day.
Wait, I'm confused a little. What number
If
do
you
we
got
send?
questions, you can stay on for sure. Everybody else, you guys are good to go.
What number do we send them, our manager again?
How many contacts that you have right now? So if Daniel,
Oh,
if I
okay.
said call everybody that you could possibly call, how many is it?
Cool.
Daniel, you can include the numbers from the directory if you want, or maybe give 2 numbers, right?
Okay, yeah, there's like 200 in the directory.
So maybe give 2 numbers. Like, here's how many I have without the directory. Here's how many I have with directory. That's why the directories are great, right? Because it's like, boom, right there. I've got a bunch. That's not always the best, but it's a resource, which I think is really important.
Yeah, it'd be nice if I can learn how to use that directory.
We'll be on it. It's on Alex's radar. I can see it right now on my screen.
I've had it for like a month and I just like get scared to touch it. I was like, I'm saving this.